And it's an honor to welcome another Irish American, and hopefully in our quest that we can lead by example of one that started this 40 years ago. I give you the President of the United States, Mr. Joe Biden.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You have all heard the expression, it's attributed to a guy named Shane Leslie, who once wrote, "Every St. Patrick's Day, every Irishman goes out to find another Irishman to make a speech to." Well, that's why I'm here. I'm glad to be with all of you. And most importantly, I'm glad that we're surrounded by so many friends of Ireland. Here in Washington, we've always been able to work across the aisle on Irish issues, no matter what our politics have been, no matter what else we agree or disagree on. So, Mr. Speaker, thank you for bringing us together again. I was trying to think. I think I've made almost every one of them. Don't get hurt, man. We need you. You okay? All right. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you for bringing us together. And thank you to all the Irish Americans here today who've spent years building a broad bipartisan consensus on the issue of Ireland. You know, Taoiseach, it's great to see you again. We just spent a little time down in the Oval Office, and we just finished an excellent meeting. So now we can enjoy a little bit of a celebration. You know, to all the friends and leaders who travel from Ireland and Northern Ireland, it's wonderful to see so many of you here once more. I stand here today, like most of you, as a descendant of the Blewitts of County Mayo and the Finnegans of County Louth. I was telling the Taoiseach that when I would have as vice president, I'd always have a breakfast for the Taoiseach before he'd go over to see the president for those 8 years. The 7th year, I think it was, Nance, that went in the Taoiseach, I brought him into the Oval, he sat down, and before Barack could say anything, he said, "For God's sake, Barack, let the boy come home. Let him come home." I'm sure to God, true story. And he said, "You keep sending him to places like Afghanistan, Iraq, and let him come home." And you have to help me with the Gaelic expression, 100,000 welcomes. What's the? Céabhíle Fáilte. And he said, he'll get 100,000 welcomes. And it was one of but they didn't plan on my bringing my whole family. But literally we saw thousands of people. And I was saying that being raised by a grandpop who went to Santa Clara back in the days when Irish in Northeast Pennsylvania didn't very much get a chance to go to college. And he was an All-American football player at Santa Clara. And he came back as a newspaper guy on the business side. And my grandfather used to say that, you know, every time I walk out of his house in Scranton, Pennsylvania, when I lived there for a while, he'd look at me and say, "Joe, remember, the best drop of blood in you is Irish." And my grandmother would say, "You need more than that." But, you know, but the fact is that when I went over to Ireland, it was a great experience. I'd been to Ireland many times, but not to actually look up to find my actual family members. And there were so many, and they actually weren't in jail. They were all, but all kidding aside, I met the Blewitts and the Finnegans and all of the folks who we were related to. Spent 6 days there, and one of the things that, and the Finnegans were from County Louth. And there's still, if you go to County Louth, there's still a place called Finnegan's Pub, which is, Reverend, it's related to my family. I'm the only Irishman you ever met, though, that's never had a drink, so I'm okay. I'm really not Irish. But look, as many of you know, I, like all of you, take pride in my Irish ancestry. And as long as I can remember, it's been sort of part of my soul, how I've been raised. And You know, during the times of darkness and despair, it always sort of brings light, strength when you think about what my ancestors went through and what we're going through now, and the history that binds us and the values that unite us. You know, there are values I learned at my grandpa's kitchen table, where he would always, my grandpa's kitchen table, particularly on Sunday after 10:30 Mass at St. Paul's, you get to wander around the table. You never got to sit down when you were a kid, but he had 4 sons, and they'd sit there, and another guy from the newspaper, a guy named Tommy Phillips, who was sort of at the time the David Broder of the Scranton paper, and they'd sit there and they'd talk. And one day, I'm sitting there and he's talking about a guy that I didn't understand why he was sticking up for him. And he was the city chairman of the party, whose son was the city chairman when I ran for president, at any rate. And he was always in trouble. He was sort of like a late Mayor Daley, a brother-in-law on the payroll kind of thing. And so I couldn't understand my grandpa with Mr. Rectitude. And I couldn't understand why he was, so liked him so much. And he reached up, and you could wander the table, he just couldn't sit. And he put his arm around me. He said, "Joey, come here." And I knew this was about to be a public lesson for Joey. And he said, "You're wondering why I like Patty?" And I said, No, Grandpa, no. He said, "No, you're wondering." I said, "Let me tell you something." He'd look at you and say, "Ambrose, I'm going to cut your heart out." And he'd mean it. Or, "Ambrose, I'm going to jump off the bridge for you." Whatever he said he'd do, just remember, do what you say. Do what you say. And he was one of those guys who always did what he said. And the biggest thing for my grandfather was, "Joey, never bend, never bow, never kneel, never yield. Never, never." And the values I learned from my mom, Catherine Eugenia Finnegan Biden, she used to say, "Remember, you're defined by your courage and you're redeemed by your loyalty." You're defined by your courage and you're redeemed by your loyalty. My father's values were similar, but he had a saving grace. There was a Hanafi on his mother's side of the family from Galway. And, my dad was one of those guys who taught all of us that everyone, no matter who they are, everyone is entitled to be treated with dignity and respect. Everybody, not a joke. My father would no more walk through the Hotel DuPont and say hello to the chairman of the board of the DuPont company we didn't know, but say hello to him and not say hello to the shoe shine guy. That was my dad. And so, everyone was determined. These are the same values that I and all of you, I think, try to pass down to our children about hope in the future. And more than anything, I believe this hope is what beats inside the heart of all of us and all of our people. The idea that there's nothing beyond our capacity if we work at it hard enough. For generations, it was hope that brought our countries together in war and in hardship, and hope that has inspired so many of our ancestors to reach for a future of greater peace and greater security and possibilities. To this day, I think hope still brings us together. Hope. I used to drive Barack crazy because I'd always say to him, "Mr. President, the country will never be more optimistic than their president. It's all about hope. It's all about hope." And to this day, hope still brings us together and it's going to allow us to achieve big things, in my view. It's important to keep that in mind, that as we approach the upcoming anniversary of the Good Friday agreements. I wish George was here, George Mitchell, who spent a long time, hard to believe, 25 years ago this year, that the agreement was made. It was delivered nearly 25 years of progress in Northern Ireland, which at the time nobody, I thought was possible. There were still people getting killed, still people getting shot, still people at war with one another. For years, people found ways to work across party lines and above the differences to make all this happen. But it was a real struggle, but people never gave up. And as I said, giants like George Mitchell devoted his life to this building and the Congress and the Senate, but he also he never backed down. He never gave up. And the Northern Ireland Irish leaders who are here today, they took a lot of brave steps that were necessary to so that their children might have a better future. And Northern Ireland leaders that are here today, let me say how important it was to see you standing shoulder to shoulder with the Chief Constable Byrne after your and affirming your commitment to the future following the attempted murder of Detective Chief Inspector Caldwell. We'll all have to continue to work to protect peace and stability. And I met out in San Diego with the British Prime Minister, and we talked about our commitment to the Windsor Framework. It's a vital, vital step, and that's going to help ensure all the people of Northern Ireland have an opportunity to realize their full potential. And I just keep reminding my family and anybody near me that I'm a big fan of Seamus Heaney, and when he passed away, his wife was kind enough to send me a long handwritten note and a copy of his poems that he had, some of which he had written by hand. And one of his Cura Troy is one of my favorite. And he used the phrase, and he said, remember that history says don't hope on this side of the grave, but then, once in a lifetime, the longed-for tidal wave of justice rises up, and hope and history rhyme. I think we have a chance of making hope and history rhyme, with all our differences. I think those of us who have been coming to this dinner a long time have never been in a case where, from the perspective of the public, the parties and the politics have been so divided as it is now. But I agree with the speaker. There's no reason why we can't find common ground. There's no reason why we can't hope to change this direction of the extremes in both our parties are pushing. I think it's important. I think it's really important. And that's the power of friendship. I think it's the power of, that's the strength of our partnership if we work at it. And simply put, I think it's the Irish of it. I think it's the Irish of it. So I hope we can turn this breakfast into a more of an everyday relationship, the way we treat everyone in this Congress. There's so many possibilities we have. We can disagree on details, but there's nothing, as I always say, just remember, we're the United States of America. Nothing is beyond our capacity. Whatever we've set our mind to in the past, we've done, no matter what. Let's remember that.